Hey guys, this is J-Boy from the J-Boy Show. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's a free way to make podcasts. It's unbelievable. It's how I started. Number one, like I said, it's free. Number two, it gives you creative tools to be able to add to your podcast, whether it be background music and all type of stuff. Three, they can get it on Spotify, Apple. You can get paid with sponsorships just by using ads, very similar to this one. So, download the free Anchor app, guys. It's unbelievable. You'll love it. And at the end of the day, it can get you started. All right. See you soon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on the inaugural interview-style episode of the J-Boy Show. This week, we welcome co-host of The Drive, ESPN 106.7's Dan Peck. Dan is also the voice of the Troy Trojans women's basketball team. I've known Dan for a long time. He's very knowledgeable about Auburn sports, SEC sports, and sports in general. The format of our discussion and any of these discussions I have with guests going forward will be very casual, conversation-like. We'll be able to expound in different areas. I do have a set of questions and a set of topics I want to make sure we get to. Time will take what it takes. At the end of the day, we want quality. Doesn't matter quantity, if it's long or short. But really excited to get Dan here and really appreciate you guys checking us out. Also, if you'd like to donate to help the show grow, we have our GoFundMe pinned at the top of our Twitter page at The J-Boy Show, at THEJBOYSHOW. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks for listening and hope you enjoy the show.
Hey, bud, can you hear me?
Dan, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going great, man. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm honored. I'm thrilled.
Well, good, dude. I really appreciate it. And again, man, it's nice to be kicking it off with a guy that I know is knowledgeable about, obviously, Auburn sports in general and SEC sports in general. And really the reason I wanted to get you on, and we kind of talked about this in the pre-show, was really just your ability to be able to expound on things, because I want us to be able to go from topic to topic without having it have to be too consorted, if that makes sense. So
yeah, I like to think this is going to be relatively similar to if you and I got together for lunch or something and wanted to talk about Auburn football.
100%.
Maybe we'll stay a little more on topic because this is for an audience. But no, I think this is I think you and I should be able to have a pretty fun chat. I miss you. We should have been catching up more in the last in the last few years.
100%, man. And again, it was a great time being with you and Bill when you're on Sports Call. If you don't know now, if you're listening out there, you can catch Dan and Bill Cameron on The Drive on ESPN 106.7. They do an awesome job. You can find them also at ESPNAU.com. Is that correct?
That's right. ESPNAU.com.
Okay.
We have a podcast center up on the website, and you can find we archive every show. Yeah. And then there's also an app. There's an ESPN 106.7 app that you can download, and awesome. you can cycle through the podcasts of The Drive or listen live through that.
Awesome. Well, shoot, I'm actually going to download that app. I didn't even realize there was an app.
The app's pretty cool. You can listen live, and you can scroll through the podcast center and stuff. It's nice.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, shoot, let's get into it, Dan, and kind of really, I want to start off obviously with kind of what's in the front. Yesterday, Auburn got a big commitment from Dylan Cardwell. People out there aren't familiar. The kid's 6'11". He played at McEachern this past year. I say he played, but he was actually ineligible due to a transfer rule. But if you look at it, and I didn't even realize this, Dan, you have Isaac Okoro, Sharif Cooper, Stretch Akimbola, and now Dylan Cardwell, all from the same high school at McEachern, and really all from the same AAU team. So really, I want you to kind of start, Dan, talking about Auburn and Bruce Pearl and really the Georgia connection in basketball recruiting. Because if you look back at Chumo Kiki, Bryce Brown, Jared Harper, Anthony McLemore, a ton of guys, and even more in the past, have come from Georgia.
Yeah, no, that's a key aspect of what Auburn's been able to do the last couple of years. I think is their ability to get not only players out of the state of Georgia that the University of Georgia and other SEC schools didn't want, because that's the story of Jared Harper, that's the story of Bryce Brown,
100%.
But also, more recently, guys that everyone in the Southeastern Conference would have put out of the state of Georgia. Isaac Okoro and now Dylan Cardwell, who still, had SEC offers. Even, it's remarkable. And I think it's a sign of how different things are that a player of Dylan Cardwell's caliber, Auburn can sort of wait and slow play. Like Auburn can sort of, they can hold off on somebody like that and see what else happens, because I mean, there are other coaches in Auburn's history where Dylan Cardwell is the jewel of your recruiting class. But with this current Auburn group, he's a guy who could contribute, and he's a really nice pickup. But he's certainly, he's not the focus of what of what Auburn has accomplished in recruiting this year. And that's another indication of how drastically things have changed since before Bruce Pearl got here, even a couple of years into Bruce Pearl's tenure.
100%. And you know, when I look at it, and I think you bring up a great point, and I was actually talking with JG Tate on the Brain Drain the other day about it, is 2 years ago, Auburn fans would have been over the moon to get Dylan Cardwell. Like you said, he would be the jewel of the class. But now Auburn's to the point where not only are you in the running to be able to get high-profile guys, the highest of the high-profile, the Cliff Omoyoris, the Jalen Greens, the Greg Browns, but you're actually able to parlay a top 150 player in the country that, in my opinion, and I tweeted it last night, my opinion that the kid, to me, is further along than Austin Wiley coming out of high school as a senior. I watched the way he moves, and I say that because Austin was a great contributor to Auburn, especially later in his career. But just from a personal standpoint, if you would have told me that Austin Wiley's production would have been what it was when he signed with Auburn, with all the accolades that he came in with, I would have expected more, to be honest with you.
No, absolutely. And I wouldn't have. I don't want to downplay Dylan Cardwell's potential contribution to the team either. It sounds like, oh, hey, well, and they also got, this guy, but I mean, he looks to be, not only does he look to sort of fit the part of a post in a fast paced offense. I mean, but with the way he's, his sort of frame and the way he moves. I mean, it seems like he can play in what is it's a difficult style for big men to have to. To play at that.
It's a very specific style.
Yeah, to play at that tempo. I mean, not everyone can do it, and sometimes if you don't have the personnel, you have to sort of change what you want to do. But we know. I mean, one of the things that is absolutely certain about a Bruce Pearl basketball team is that they're going to go fast. And I mean, we've seen that at several different stops in his college career, and when Auburn has been at their best the last 3 seasons, they've been playing fast. And I think that's something that's going to continue. And when you look at the posts that Auburn has signed in this class, when you look at not only Cardwell, but also JT Thor, these are guys who look like they can fit that mold. I mean, they're 6'8" to 6'10", but they don't carry very much weight on that frame. And they look to be able to run and shoot. And, are they maybe liabilities in a half-court situation defensively? I mean, maybe we'll see what happens. I mean, Austin Wiley certainly. I mean, he was a huge part of Auburn's success this year. Was Austin Wiley's ability to just sort of clean up anything that happened around the back. How Auburn replaces that. We'll see. Maybe that's Babatunde Akingbola, but I mean, we'll have to see about that because he hasn't played very much. But what Auburn is doing, and I think when you look at the signees under Bruce, when you look at what Auburn has been able to do in recruiting, they deserve the benefit of the doubt when they take a chance on somebody who maybe isn't in. I mean, Javon McCormick fell out of the sky as a junior college player and ended up becoming a starting point guard and a good one in for an SEC team that was ranked all season long and was looking like one of the 10 best teams in the country at the end of the year. Jared Harper was a guy who was these are guys that Bruce Pearl not only has had success with players that everybody thinks can go out there and win. He's found enough guys who overachieve versus what they are on signing day. That I mean, I think if you're wondering why he signed somebody, you give him the benefit of the doubt because he's been able to find players who fit his system and contribute.
Exactly. And I always thought, and we used to say it all the time in coaching, stars are great, all this stuff's great, but your ability to sit in that room and watch the film and be able to project a kid may be the difference in having that extra guy coming off the bench that can help.
Yeah, no, and Bruce Pearl has gone after guys with stars too. It's not like he's completely. I mean, but he's been able to he's been able to find guys who ended up looking vastly underrated on signing day because of how productive they and who knows? I mean, would Jared Harper have become Jared Harper playing somewhere else and playing
I
a
don't think
different
so, Dan.
style? I mean,
I don't think so.
I don't want to give Bruce Pearl all the credit, but I mean, he certainly. I mean, some of it is what he can teach these guys and what his system asks them to do.
Yeah.
And maybe Dylan Cardwell is going to be more productive in a Bruce Pearl offense than he would be in a different system. So the system is so important, and they're one thing, if you're going to do what Bruce Pearl does and you're going to win, you're going to develop a talent for figuring out what players can do it and what players can't.
100%. And really, I have a theory, and I've talked about this in previous podcasts. I think the way that Auburn and Bruce Pearl now that he's in a scenario where he has leverage with kids, because obviously when he got to Auburn, you had no leverage. You're just trying to find what you can find and be able to put enough wins on the board to somehow try and achieve another step toward that leverage. Well, you fast forward 5-6 years from when he got here, you're looking at Auburn as Corey Evans had them the number one rising college basketball team in recruiting in the country. But I think what Bruce is aiming for, and I think he's hit the target here the past couple of years, is in his signing classes, and you can see it in this class. It's a great representation in this class. I feel like he tries to blend 2 or 3, if he can get them, elite, one and done, high profile guys with a bunch of you could say underrated, maybe under-offered guys that he knows will turn into great players. And I say that by looking at, okay, you sign a Mustafa Heron, but you all get a Chuma Okeke, a Jared Harper, and a Bryce Brown, and an Anthony McLemore around him. Now you have a team. You look at this class, you have Sharif Cooper, who's obviously elite. You have JT Thor, who's an elite prospect, who was a top 10 prospect until he reclassified. And then you look around and you have Justin Powell, who I think is one of the most underrated shooters in the country. I think Chris Moore is going to be a guy that can do a little bit of everything, that you can bounce around positionally a little bit. And if you look at the class in total, there's kind of a nice balance. And I think that helps him blend and gel everything once it comes
to I mean, I don't know if it's by design that all 3 5-stars, and I say only as though that's like the only 3 in the history of the program have been signed under Bruce Pearl, and it's Heron, Wiley, and now Sharif Cooper. And I mean, would he like to have signed more? I mean, he's been in on more than that, and some of them have chosen to do something else. So I think he would love to bring in a roster of 4 or 5 stars in one.
See, do you think though? Like,
I think he would have taken. Let's take this year for example. They signed Sharif Cooper. They would have taken Jalen Green. They would have taken Greg Brown. They would take Jonathan Kuminga if he reclassified. Right now, that's 4. I mean, who else were they in on from this class? I mean,
the thing is that I think they took the commitment from the Powell kid pretty early. That's true. I think they took it pretty early. The Chris Moore kid, and again, there's not a ton of tape out there on Chris Moore, so I don't want to get too far in that. But really, what I'm thinking, and again, there are facts that can help not disprove the theory, but go against it, is that I don't think Bruce Pearl wants 6 or 7 high.
Well, nobody really signs 6 or 7. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's a
I mean, Kentucky
has had years.
What did they want?
But I think Bruce is taking. I mean, he's doing an excellent job. Whether it's on guys that everybody knows are going to go to college basketball, and guys that are suspected one and dones. Whether it's people like that, or whether it's people that are fringe SEC caliber prospects as recruits. I mean, Bruce Pearl's doing an excellent job finding guys that fit. And I mean, would he take more highly touted guys if more wanted to pick Auburn? Yeah, I'm sure he would, but he's doing just fine. And I mean, I certainly don't want to focus on the guys like Jalen Green and Greg Brown, because I totally understand both of those decisions. Like, I would have loved to see both of them at Auburn, but Greg Brown was under enormous pressure to stay home and save the Texas basketball program and save Shaka Smart's job. And Jalen Green was offered. I mean, and what people need to remember about Jalen Green is not only was he offered this amount of money to go play in the G League for a year before going into the 2021 draft, he was also offered the opportunity to sign a shoe contract. And that is, he's set for life before he finishes high school. And when you're
Yeah.
being offered the opportunity to be set for life before you've graduated high school, you probably need to think about signing that contract.
You have to take it. I would take it, Dan. I'm not a hypocrite. If somebody came to me right now and offered me, and I had to choose between going to school to get a master's degree or getting $500,000 and signing a podcast contract, I would definitely take the $500,000 in the podcast.
I mean the 500,000, and then on top of that, I don't know if Jalen Green has actually signed yet. If he has, I missed that news, but he. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's the opportunity there to sign endorsement deals. It's just, I mean, that is until they change the one and done, I really think that's going to be a something that sort of looms over college basketball recruiting, is the possibility of G League sweeping in and making, because they offered Jalen Green $500,000, but who's to say if a Zion Williamson type prospect who's an enormous celebrity as a high schooler comes around, they won't offer considerably more than that. So I don't know. That's going to be something that is a wrench that has been thrown into recruiting that, until the rules change, is going to be there for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. See, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because everybody in their mind kind of has a plan that they think would kind of work, and I'm interested to hear yours. Mine is very simple. Obviously, you're using the kid's likeness to make money. That is a true statement. How many number 2 Auburn jerseys were sold when Cam Newton was at Auburn? Obviously, they didn't have his name on it. So it's
how many of those Gene Chizik smocks did you sell with the?
Oh yeah. They're still floating around Auburn, those that hadn't been burned. But I think you have to, number one, as the NCAA, you can't pay everybody the same. It's not going to work. Number one, how do you? You have 85 people on scholarship.
Well, the NCAA, the NCAA paying, students is going to be. There are a lot of hurdles. Not only does it fly in the face of every legal argument the NCAA has been making for decades on end, but also, I think you would run into problems trying to only pay students as student athletes in revenue generating sports. I think there would be issues about can schools offer more than I actually sort of like. If the assumption is that we're not close to student athletes being considered employees getting paid by schools, if the assumption is we're not close to that, I like the name, image, and likeness thing as a way for people to make money. I guess I don't see anything wrong with college athletes endorse products on social media, or college athletes appearing in commercials, or college athletes. I think there's a lot of stuff that, it made sense when this was a strictly amateur operation, and you were maybe worried about, the mob, putting making guys throw games and stuff. When you were worried about that stuff in the very early days of college athletics, you needed these strict rules about what athletes can and cannot make money doing. But that was before social media. That was before television, for the most part. That was before a lot of things that have really changed the game, as far as what kind of celebrity you can be as a college football player or a college basketball player. And I guess I see no problem with, I like that better than the schools paying the athletes directly. But I think, and I would have no problem with schools paying athletes directly either. I just feel like we're a long way from that. And we're close to some sort of Olympic style amateurism with endorsements, because until you're a professional at your sport, you're still technically an amateur, and endorsements don't change that. That's the opinion of the Olympics when they look at who's an amateur and who isn't. And I think that can be the point of view of college athletics without a lot of without very many headaches.
Yeah, and if you look at it, it's almost pure capitalism, because what you're saying is, if you're good enough and a company thinks that your game is worthy enough, or they project you to be such a great NBA player that they want to, sign you to an endorsement deal now, how can that be stopped? That should never be stopped. I guess anything. It's just like
I think it seems like it makes sense to me. That I understand there are, I guess the concerns would be, you don't want people who are closely tied to a university using the endorsements to give a school an advantage in recruiting. And I understand that, if you have like let's use Phil Knight, for example, right? Like let's say, should Nike be using endorsement deals to entice athletes to go to the University of Oregon? Like should those sorts of things be happening? Now
don't you think that already happens though with Under Armour and Nike? I mean, the biggest knock, even Tony Barbie himself, who I don't give a lot of credence to, said Auburn will never win because they're an Under Armour school. I mean, literally, this whole investigation that just came out was basically that, peddling people to a certain. So I think, do you think now that maybe that's kind of exposed? Because I think, Dan, if you can add a caveat to it, I think that if a player decides to go to college, all right, and you were talking about the one and done rule earlier, I think they should have to go for at least 2 years with the ability to get endorsements. And here's why. Because there's a way they're all going to go back to, well, these kids aren't going to go to class. They're not going to do this. Well, I think, and again, I think there's a way to do this. It should be contingent on, okay, well, let's say you have a kid that's a freshman, all right? And he had an unbelievable fall, unbelievable spring. They had a great tournament run. He's going into a sophomore year, and Gatorade wants to endorse him. Well, if that kid isn't eligible to play the next year, Gatorade's not going to want to endorse him because he's not going to be on the court. So do you not think there can be some sort of parallel between the academic side?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't really have a big problem with players leaving after their freshman year. I mean, it probably shouldn't happen in the NFL unless you're an absolute. I think Jim Harbaugh was talking about changing that earlier this week, where he wanted players to be able to declare after their.
He just needs to worry about Ohio State.
No, and I think the rare prospect. I mean, you've heard for a long time that most, that players aren't ready for the NFL until they've spent 3 or 4 years in college, and for the most part, that's true.
I would say
90 maybe even higher than that. But I would say, look at this past year's draft. Trevor Lawrence was only in college for 2 years. I think a team would have taken a chance on Trevor Lawrence if he was able to declare for the 2020 NFL draft. I think so Justin Fields has only been in college for 2 years. If he had been in this year's draft, I think a team would have taken a chance on him. So I mean, especially when Jordan Love's going in the first round. I mean, I got to imagine teams wouldn't have been too scared off by the fact that he was only a sophomore. So I don't know. That to me is a I understand why colleges and the NFL want players to have to spend 3 years. I think for the most part, it's a good idea. In basketball, I mean, I think you're going to have a really hard time keeping all basketball players in school for 2 years, because I think if you implement a rule like that, the G League's going to look a lot better or if you take a rule like that, you're probably going to need you're probably going to need to get rid of the rule prohibiting high school players from going into the NBA draft. Like that would need to be the trade-off. I just worry that you would. I worry you would harm the talent level coming into college basketball, because maybe not. I mean, maybe most players understand that they're going to spend more than 1 year in college anyway, so it won't change very much. But I mean, I look at the one and done needing to go away more than any other problem, because I don't think. Look, if you know you're going to go, if your plan is the NBA, maybe there needs to be an option other than college basketball for you. I actually like the G League idea, because I don't think that college should be the only way to get to the NBA.
Well, it's minor league baseball, Dan. It's minor league baseball. And I talked about this the other day. I think actually, and not, I've seen nobody else talk about this. If the NCAA started to pay players, I think the sport that is the most positively affected by it, hands down, is college baseball, for 2 reasons. One, you can't. If you have close to a full scholarship in college baseball at a high level, you're
look. I would hope we're putting baseball players on full scholarship before we're paying players too. I mean, I would say why don't we just
listen. You and Ron Polk and me and about 5
right.
It just hasn't happened. And Dan, if it hasn't happened by now,
sure.
I just don't think it's going to happen. And I think it has a little bit to do with Title IX as well. I think there's a little bit of that built in there. But because you can't, you say, okay, well, baseball generates money. It does. It at least breaks even at higher places. LSU, even Auburn, I think, does pretty well. But so you're going to sit here and say, well, we're going to give college baseball players full scholarships, but we can't give the softball players full scholarships because it doesn't generate money.
I totally agree with that sort of point of view on college baseball, where I would like to see. Well, I'd like to see players on full scholarship, and that'd be great.
Would.
I mean, obviously, it doesn't make
financial
sense for some schools. It's unfortunate, but I would. I hear the idea that some of these guys are going to have to pay a lot of money to to get their extra year of eligibility next year. I mean, that's a bummer. But I mean, it really, and then
it sucks.
But as far as it's interesting you bring up college baseball, because when you think about the G League proposal in the NBA, yeah, I mean, the concern would be that some of the best prospects are not going to come from high school to college basketball. They're going to choose something else. But that happens in college baseball, and I don't think it has not ruined the sport. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a.
I'm
I don't
100%
know.
with you.
I think it's actually sort of an interesting move, and we'll see what I like options being there for prospects, and the G League is another one.
Yeah. And again, like I said, there's so many unknowns. It's just such a tough deal to navigate, but something's going to have to happen eventually. And I do kind of want to shift back to basketball. Who do you think, now that Auburn has signed Cardwell and they really have one spot left in this class, and there is time, I believe he has until August 1st. And there's a few guys out there. McCord Maker's another guy that, everybody thought was going pro, didn't get a great grade back. I know Bruce has been talking to him, but who do you think gets that last scholarship that's on the board right now? It could be somebody unknown, like you said, a Javon McCormick.
Yeah, I would say my guess is either they're going to wait to see what Jonathan Kuminga does, and I don't want to make it seem like it's super likely that Jonathan Kuminga is on Auburn next year, because he's a guy with options, because he could reclassify and go G League. He could pick a different school. He could stay in school and have a senior year and then make his decision next year. He's got a lot of options. So I don't want to make it seem like the most likely outcome here is that Auburn's going to sign Jonathan Kuminga with that last scholarship spot. It's a possibility, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's the most. Now, you mentioned Javon McCormick, and last year there was a guy from Little Rock, Arkansas, who was on the team. He didn't play much this year, Javon Franklin.
Javon Franklin. I know he had the injury.
They 2 years in a row, they've signed a guy who wasn't on anyone's radar out of junior college, and often it's almost, we like the athleticism, and there's usually a story as to why the guy wasn't on. I think with Javon McCormick, maybe it was size concerns, and he didn't. I don't think he shot the ball particularly well his last year as a junior college player, but I mean, they obviously saw something like they liked in McCormick, and it paid off. Waiting to see with Franklin. I think the next guy, unless it's Kuminga, I think the last scholarship spot's going to be somebody who can provide point guard depth beyond Sharif Cooper. Because right now, if you're, I think the most valid concern about the roster as it's currently constructed is, what do you do at point guard when Sharif Cooper's on the bench? Because I mean, Turbo Jones he was really a non-factor last season. I think most people sort of see him as a two guard, ideally. Jamal Johnson is still there, but he didn't really get any looks at point guard last year. He is a guard who's going to have to play, and actually shot the 3-point shot pretty well last year. I think that Jamal Johnson, the Memphis transfer, and son of
he did early, and then
I think he still finished around 38-39% though. So I mean.
I'd have to look at it. It's almost like his playing time dissipated.
It did. He was one of the players who lost. Maybe he lost more than anyone else in minutes when Jalen Williams joined the rotation.
Oh yeah, which I'm very high on Jalen Williams. And to be honest with you, Dan, when I would watch Auburn games and I would be up in Montana, I actually had to go to this little sports bar, the only one in Havre that had the SEC network, and everybody thought I was nuts. I actually would literally have people, when I'd go watch the game that were regulars there, who didn't even know who Auburn was, become Auburn fans and literally help me root for Auburn.
So with my Troy travels, I spent a lot lot of time in hotel bars watching Auburn this past year in Sunbelt towns. I was there I was there, just outside of Lafayette or something, you know what I mean? Watching Jonesboro, Arkansas, watching the hotel lobby, watching Auburn basketball this year.
Yeah, and I noticed when Jalen Williams would come in, he would always do one thing that I would kind of be like,
sure,
wow, whether it was that spinning layup,
the alley-oop to himself
layup that he did.
And it really bothered me.
Yeah, and I was wondering, where was this kid?
That really bothered me because they ruled it. They scored it a missed shot and an offensive rebound and then a putback. And I was like, that first one wasn't a shot.
No, it's an assist and a make.
That wasn't an offensive rebound. What is this?
Dude, I've never seen anybody do that in a college basketball game. And I've watched a ton of college basketball, Dan. I had never seen it.
I've seen people do it in the NBA All-Star game, right?
In the NBA,
guys,
yeah.
Guys
never
will do it in
college.
Well, no, guys will do crazy stuff in that the rookie-sophomore game. You'll see, like, players will bounce the ball off the other guy's head. Like, they'll do stuff like that. But yeah, I can't. Yeah. I don't know if I've ever seen in a crowded lane a college basketball player throw himself an alley-oop off the backboard. I don't know if I've ever seen that either.
Yeah. And finished. I think he was actually a little surprised that he finished it. But I think, Dan, and I'm kind of in the minority here. Honestly, I was in the minority. Every Auburn fan in the world thought Greg Brown was going to Auburn. We said Texas the whole time here. With Dylan Cardwell,
I don't even think we finished second for Greg Brown, to be honest with you. I think he was going to the G League unless he was going to the University of Texas. Yeah. I really think that's a guy who there was. We have Sonny Smith on the drive every week, and we get to ask him. We get to pick his brain, and he's so knowledgeable, not just about the current Auburn roster and the current Auburn coaches, but because of the different stops he's made and the friends he's made, he knows about. Like we can play like a lightning round game with Sonny, where we can just ask him about it. We can bring up a coach's name, and he can go for a minute and a half, 2 minutes about what makes that coach great. Whether it's Tom Crean or the new Wake Forest coach, Steve Forbes, because he used to be at East Tennessee State, where Sonny used to coach. So he knows everybody.
Yeah.
So we asked him about Greg Brown's recruitment and the pressure on Greg Brown to go to Texas. Even hardcore college basketball fans can't imagine what it's like when you're a kid. When you're a kid when you're that kind of prospect in the same city as a big time school that wants you. The pressure to go to that school is something that we just can't. Yeah. We don't know what that's like. And Greg Brown was under immense pressure to choose the University of Texas, and I think that was. I would have been shocked if he'd chosen anything else, just because that's and it's really. I wonder if Shaka Smart would still be the coach right now if Greg Brown had chosen something other than the University of Texas. I think. Well,
I wonder if Shaka Smart would still be the coach right now if COVID-19 didn't come to the United States, because he was on his way out. They got hot a little bit at the end.
Yeah, they still look like a tournament team.
Right
before the Big 12 tournament. Most people had them.
A fringe. I thought they should be in that. They should have to play in the playing game to get where they were. Because if you look at their numbers, it wasn't great. It's not like they were out there. They didn't have a great RPI.
Hey, who would have won it all
SOS,
if there'd been a tournament?
Man, and it's so tough. But if I had to pick one, and
I
just kind of watching,
the caveat
Baylor
is you don't. Really there's no bracket, so you don't know. But
yeah, but Baylor to me had a dominant, and a former Auburn player who happens to be from Georgia, Davion Mitchell, was a starter and was one of the best guard defenders in college basketball. But when I looked at Baylor, they had size, they had shooting, they had athleticism, but they had depth, because Baylor was a different situation. It was a bunch of transfers that came in and gelled. It wasn't like it was 2 or 3 recruiting classes that they had developed and they finally got old enough to where they knew everything. It was a bunch of transfers that they plugged in. But I thought Baylor would have won it. My question to you, Dan, is how far would have Auburn gone if they were, let's just say that Auburn was in a, let's just say above average strength bracket. And let's say they were
I think and as corny as it is to say, it all would have depended on what the bracket held for them, because Auburn was a team I think that the opponent's style, more so than in the previous 2 years, I think the opponent's style really mattered, because Auburn felt more comfortable playing different styles of basketball this year. They had a lineup that they felt could hang in a half-court situation, and they also wanted to get up tempo and run. And so if you wanted to slow things down, Auburn, in a lot of ways, would try to play your game, and to varying degrees of success. They really got hot at the end of the year. Maybe the best performance all season was the win in Knoxville to end the regular season. I mean, and that was.
I agree 100%, Dan. I thought they played their best.
Is because that was a Tennessee team that was, in all honesty, probably the 4th best team in the conference by the end of the season. They really came on strong. They beat Kentucky and Florida there at the end. And I think they won in Rupp Arena, as a matter of fact. I mean, they did.
They did.
They had Auburn
went off.
they had a big lead right in
17,
that's right.
Dan.
I mean, they were up
17
in Auburn. They were they rallied from down a huge number in that game in Knoxville, but Auburn still had enough to salt it. I mean, that was a really impressive win. And I think Auburn would have had a pretty good shot at some success. I mean, could they have? Would I have liked Auburn against one of the 1 seeds in this year's tournament? If Dayton or Gonzaga or one of those two Big 12 teams. I think that might have been where the ride ended. I don't know, but I think Auburn could have. But at the same time, I mean, the ride could have ended against North Carolina last year. They could have been the same team that got hot. I mean, that's and it's
New Mexico
one
State.
of the things. And look, I totally understand, why the tournament got canceled, and I'm not angry at anyone for that. But it's a real shame. Among the reasons it's a bummer is the. I really wanted Samir Dowdy to have a chance to redeem himself in a postseason a year after the end of the Auburn Virginia game. That guy had such a strong senior season, and I mean he's Auburn's first All SEC player in decades. I mean this guy was unbelievable, and I mean I would have liked to see what it could have meant in the in the NCAA tournament. It really is. I mean it's. The last 3 years has been amazing, and you've had to say goodbye to players after every season. I'm really going to miss this senior class. Like that, they're thinking about like watching a team without Wiley and without Samir Dowdy anymore. I mean, it's just like, I mean, among other, Anthony McLemore was. I mean, what's amazing is that their next year you're not going to have anyone who was on that first group that won the conference. The 2017-2018 team. I mean, it's an entirely new group. And really, and what's different is now everybody signing to play for Auburn is signing up to play for a winner. Like those guys who signed the 2017-2018 team, that group of Harper and Brown and Okeke, Malik Dunbar, Mustafa, Anthony McLemore. You had Wiley and Purifoy. That was the year they were suspended. I mean, this Horace Spencer, Malik, these guys, Davion Mitchell, they were taking a chance on Auburn. I mean, it was an Auburn team that really had not had much success in a long time. They changed everything, and then the team adds guys the following year. But now it is totally different because now when you recruit, you're recruiting an Auburn team that is on national television all the time and is playing in front of a full arena and was in the Final Four last year. It's just I mean, the contributions of the outgoing senior class from this year among the players and as well the players that aren't on the team anymore, but were also a huge part of that success. I mean, it's what they're among the most important student athletes in Auburn history because of what they've done for this men's basketball team. I mean, I remember when I was an Auburn student, you could get, and I'm not that old, and when I was an Auburn student, you could show up 10 minutes before tip-off and get an excellent seat.
Yep.
And now game day is here. Like it's complete. It's night and day.
Yeah. It's crazy. And I always tell this story. And when I was
I think
11 and 12 years old,
I think I really like
Obi Toppin was the best player in the country.
They were. I liked a lot of players on the Oregon team this year too. I thought they were going to be like a tough out in an NCAA tournament situation. But I really like Dayton. Yeah,
I thought Obi Toppin was the best player in the country. What I was getting to was, so when I was 11 and 12, when Cliff Ellis was here, I was one of those ball boys that sat under the goal. Now they have what looks like grown men with mops, but they would let ball boys. We'd have our ball boy shirt on, and we'd go during timeouts, wipe the sweat off the court, and we'd be able to shoot around before the game. And this is when Auburn had Scott Pullman and Chris Porter and Brian Smith and Doc Robinson, and were number one in the country. So I was under the goal that Chris Porter had the putback dunk against LSU on. I was at Auburn when Tubby Smith came with his son. God, I think his name was Saul. I can't remember it. And he was the point guard, and ESPN came to the game. And that was a huge deal that ESPN was there. And you had Mamadou Njai and all that stuff. And there was a buzz around Auburn basketball because I think Auburn in general does a great job of from a fan standpoint, realizing where a team's at and understanding that if they get support, it will put them over the top. People saw when all Auburn fan needs are a little excitement. And when Bruce Pearl got here, he generated that excitement, whether it be, winning 2 or 3 games in the SEC tournament that one year, or actually making the NCAA tournament. Because I remember, Dan, and I'm sure you do too, when making the NCAA tournament as an Auburn fan was a pipe dream. It wasn't.
Lebo had one
will
year
we go
where his team
far?
could have made the NCAA tournament. In all seriousness, I mean, there was one year where they were the year I think they ended up going to they win a couple games in the NIT that season, but that was a year where they looked to be a genuine bubble team that could have been selected. They might have been one of the first few teams out. Other than that, I mean, Auburn has not for the better part of 15 years, since the Sweet 16 team that lost to Carmelo Anthony. That's right. Played Syracuse as close as anyone in the entire tournament that year. Just got got it at the end there from Melo. But I was going to say,
and I'm wondering,
you have not had very much success for 15 years between that Sweet 16 team and the team that wins the NCAA tournament or wins the SEC in 2017, 2018, and that is it would be remarkable what's happening for Auburn. I mean, the last 3 years, I think Auburn won more games than Kentucky the last 3 years. Right?
That's insane. That's absolutely insane. And well, Dan, it all ends with, I mean, and I said this on the podcast, and I really, Auburn fans in general, this sentence to me is a sentence that I never thought I would utter in my entire life.
Yeah.
Auburn went to the Final
Almost
Four,
won it,
Dan.
Yeah.
Almost should have won it.
Well,
the dude double dribbled. I don't give a shit what anybody says.
And I'm not going to dispute that, but the reason he double dribbled is because Bryce Brown intentionally fouls him, grabs the jersey, and the referee doesn't call that either. I don't know what that guy was. I mean, I don't know what that referee was looking at. There is a very obvious, because Bryce is trying to stop the clock. I mean, he's trying to commit the foul there. Yeah, Bryce is trying to commit the foul.
Yeah, it was a smart play.
And then the guy picks up his dribble because everyone, I think most players thought the play was over, and they were waiting for the whistle, and the whistle doesn't come, and so the
I think they did too.
Picks the ball up and dribbles again. Referee doesn't call that either. I don't know. It was too bad that because the other thing is that's a great game. Like that, the story of that game is not the last 10 seconds, and
Bryce Brown.
The story
in that
of that game
span
should not be the last 10 seconds, but because the last 10 seconds are not just so unusual, but also so heartbreaking for Auburn fans. That really is all that gets met. Like when you hear, it reminds me a little bit, and Auburn's on the other side of this one, but it reminds me a little bit of the kick six in that the 2013 Auburn-Alabama game is a classic. Like it is an absolute, it is just a back and forth heavyweight title fight. Like just an awesome game. And none of it
was
and
best game I've ever seen
gets remembered because the kick six overshadows all of it. Like people
people forget the 4th and 1 stop with TJ Yeldon. An unbelievable play by the Auburn defense.
Touchdown
4th
pass
and inches
to tie the game. I mean, that game is incredible, and the last few seconds are so. I mean, you could say the same thing about the Georgia game in 2013 as well, right? I mean, that's another one where the last play is so memorable that the rest of the game sort of falls by the wayside, which is unfortunate because it's an absolute classic of a game.
Yeah, and again, those games will be on the list.
Was that a nice way to pivot to football?
But oh no, it was a great pivot. It was a great pivot.
Okay.
And I do the last basketball thing I want to cover, and I don't want to stick on it too long. Auburn did just announce that they have scheduled Memphis for next year.
That's right, December 12th, Atlanta, the holiday hoopsgiving.
December 12th. Yep. And you can kind of see a rivalry brewing, but I see another rivalry brewing, Dan, that I think Auburn needs to schedule San Diego State. I would love for Auburn to start, because again, they were the last 2 undefeated teams this season. You had the battle for the map stuff and all that, and there was some back and forth, but I thought the banter between Auburn and San Diego State fans was actually really good. I would love to have a neutral site game
would be tough
with those
because
guys
you're
every
probably
year.
traveling a lot for one or yeah. I mean, if you want,
you can meet in the middle. You can meet in the middle.
I mean, you could. I would have no problem with. I mean, I like a lot of what they've done with the schedule the last couple of years. I think they've played in interesting places. They've brought quality mid-major teams to Auburn. They've gone on the road and played, UAB and South Alabama and Murray State. They've played at some really unusual places that SEC teams rarely go. That's right. I mean, so they're
went to Dayton 2 years ago.
I think they've done a lot of interesting stuff, and that holiday hoopsgiving thing. It looks like it could be a really fun day of basketball. Quadruple header at State Farm Arena with 4 SEC teams playing.
Yeah.
So Kentucky Georgia Tech is a couple weeks earlier.
You have
I think that like the Thanksgiving week they're going to play. I think the Saturday of Thanksgiving they're going to play a Kentucky Georgia Tech game. In State Farm Arena, and then a couple of weeks later, after football season, they've got a quadruple header of SEC teams. And I don't have them right in front of me. I think Bama plays Clemson, and LSU,
yes, I think that's
South Florida sounds right. Maybe Mississippi State, Dayton, and then Auburn and Memphis in some order. I don't know the order, but that'll be fun.
Yeah, and I don't want to. It should. I don't want to dive too far down the basketball rabbit hole, but the last thing I know, I said that the prior thing was the last thing, but you brought up Alabama, and I talked about this in the podcast the other day. Number one, I think Nate Oates is a damn good basketball coach, and I think he will have Alabama competitive. But I just do not see, Dan, all these projections for next year as Alabama as a top 4 team, and here's why.
Top 4 in the conference
is a stretch big man. Okay. He struggles on defense.
Okay. I was like, I didn't see him as top 4
top 4 in the conference. And I'm not seeing – oh, no. You lose Petty. You lose Kira Lewis. The Forbes kid, who I thought was a pretty good shooter, but couldn't play defense, transferred. He's really exactly what the Shackelford kid is. I know they signed some kid out of California that's going to be a freshman. But Dan, where's the Canadian kid come from?
Is somebody that people are looking at as a potential one and done. He's a big time signing for any SEC school. I think that it's getting Nate Oates wants to do a lot of the same things Bruce Pearl does offensively, and I think getting players that fit that system, whether they're big time recruits or not, is paramount to that. And he's losing a first round pick in Lewis. Petty was a guy who when he was hot could really shoot the ball. Yeah, I mean he was.
Yeah, he kept them in some games.
You never
kept them in a lot, including the Auburn
look
game.
from John Petty when you were playing against Alabama. He didn't hit them all, obviously, but I mean you never felt good about giving him a look like that. I think. I don't know. I really like the Nate Oates hiring. I don't know if it's going to happen for him. I don't know if it's going to happen for him next year or if it's going to take more time than that. But I think he's a good coach, and it seems like he understands how important recruiting is to success in the Southeastern Conference in men's basketball. But Nate Oates is somebody who I think Michigan would have been really interested if they had known they were going to have a coaching change. I mean, look, they seem happy with Juwan Howard. I mean, he's a legend in the history of that program. But I mean, if Michigan knew that John Beilein was heading to the NBA for an ill-fated stint with the Cleveland Cavaliers, I didn't understand that from the very beginning.
That lasted long. I didn't either. I just like the Herm Edwards at Arizona State. I know they
maybe the best college basketball coach or when he was a college basketball coach, he was maybe the best one without a ring. Like he really was that good. Like he was. I mean, he was in that conversation. If he's not the guy, he's right there with whoever else you would look at. Yeah. I mean, and so
he's in the upper tier.
I didn't understand going to play for an NBA team without talent at all. Like if you're going somewhere that just signed a superstar, or if you're going somewhere that just drafted a guy first overall that they're really happy about, like that's one thing. But he climbed aboard a sinking ship. Like that's what he did, and it's like who? No, and Dan, he's not a young guy. I could understand if it was a young guy, and he'll be back. He'll be back in college basketball, I hope, soon. But it's I think UCLA would have probably hired him if they know John Beilein was going to be on the market.
I agree with you
Mick Cronin's a
100%.
good coach, but I think if UCLA,
I think you're
John
exactly
Beilein was
right
an
on
option,
there.
John Beilein would have been the coach at UCLA. But it's I think it's
I agree.
I would hope he's back, and I didn't understand from the very beginning why. We were talking about Nate Oates, but I think Michigan would have hired Nate Oates if they known that John Beilein was like.
Yeah. I think you're right on. I think that's a great assessment. And again, a good Alabama is good for Auburn.
And the league appears to be wide open too.
Yeah, I can understand it. It is. Well, Dan, too, the SEC, if they want to be good at something, it don't take them long. And you look at the coaches now in the SEC basketball, and again, it does just mean more. But I do, since you hit the pivot, I want to go ahead and pivot to football because there is a lot going on. And, I kind of want to start really with your outlook right now of Auburn going into the 2020 season. Obviously, without a spring, there's a lot of questions. I probably know what your answer is, but I want to ask it anyway. What do you see from a personnel standpoint at Auburn? Number one, is their biggest strength, and on the flip side of that, what is their biggest strength as it stands right now
on the entire team? That's really interesting. I would imagine the position group. Well, the position group you feel the best about is probably linebacker. Maybe receiver because you bring back three guys that are known quantities. You don't bring back three guys that you feel great about, or the three guys that have proven in most years. Mm-hmm. You don't have that luxury, and so Auburn does bring back quite a few experienced quality receivers. But linebacker, everyone's back from last year. Between KJ and McLean, who made the huge. Zacoby makes the huge pick six in the Alabama game. Owen Pappoe,
I think it's Alabama,
starts every game as a true freshman. The guy, the linebacker group next year. That's the benefit of when you go into it, and we could see a parallel with offensive line, where when you go into a group, when you go into a season with total inexperience at a position group like Auburn did at linebacker last year, when last year started. Auburn did not have a linebacker who had ever made a career start, and they lost a lot, of experience with the class that featured Deshaun Davis. And last year was about breaking those linebackers in, and KJ Britt rises to the occasion. Owen Pappoe looks like the prospect that everybody thought he was. Zacoby's outstanding. Chandler Wooten makes plays. It's not just. You've got four guys you feel great about. You bring them all back. That is. Auburn feels as good about their linebackers as anybody in the country.
And I think a product of that, and again, I think, and I know you'll hit the offensive side, is I think what helped transition those linebackers was how good the defensive line was. And my dad, who was an All-American linebacker, used to tell me the only reason he made tackles was because everybody was so scared of Auburn's defensive line, they'd forget to block him. Well, when you have to double Derek Brown and you have Marlon Davidson and even Big Cat Bryant, who can do it once he figures out he'll do it more consistently. But that not to take anything away from KJ and Owen and them or Zacoby.
For sure.
But
I think it really helps.
You know what I'm saying?
It's the same as being a quality offensive player behind an outstanding offensive line, right? It's all it's all right there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that having Marlon Davidson and Derek Brown certainly helps a group of linebackers, especially a group of inexperienced linebackers. And next year, can Auburn expect that kind of production out of their? I think it's tough to replace. Well,
it is, but at least those linebackers have that experience now. Because what's crazy is playing linebacker, you're basically playing six positions. You have to know obviously what gap the defensive line's going in. So now you have guys coming back that can tell a young kid that may be talented. They can tell a Lee Hunter, for example, hey man, you know what I'm saying? You do this and I will be here. I promise you that I will be here.
The nature of defensive line experience is different than offensive line experience too, because when you look at Auburn having to replace, and by the way, Auburn also has to replace Nick Coe, who played last year and went undrafted. Now he's with the Patriots, I believe. But yeah, we'll see. I think
he'll be all right. I got a feeling
very Belichick
gonna be all right
to bring in a guy with Nick Coe's attributes and pay. Payne next to
Yes,
yeah,
it is.
catching, yeah, you're right.
He'll be
catching
playing
touchdown
fullback
passes
for
from
it's all
Jarrett
said and done
pretty
in
soon.
the red zone there.
No, so I think that you look and yes, Auburn has to replace Marlon and Derek and Nick, but Tyron Drusdale's played a ton. And then you look at the other guys they were able to cycle in last year.
He
Thomas
has.
Miller and Daquan Newkirk and Derek Hall, who was a true freshman starting on the defensive line by the end of the season last year.
Yeah, he's got a really
they like
good,
they like Jaron
weird,
Handy.
but he's got a really good body
a
type.
ton.
Man.
Yeah. Yeah, they
He was a big
really
sign.
like
That was
him.
at Woodson,
and then
right?
you
Woodson
mentioned
signed
Big
him.
Cat. I mean, it for considering what Auburn on the defensive line last year, it's remarkable how much they bring back. Now on the offensive line, you have Nick Brahms and a whole bunch of question marks. Not to say that any of them can't develop into quality players, and it actually well no, and the hope would be that it's like linebacker,
you just don't know.
where the investment you make in your offensive line this year is going to pay off because you're going to have a group of guys who have made a bunch of starts when you back in 2021. Like that's the hope.
Does Gus have that time though, Dan?
I don't think he has a choice on the offensive
another
line.
year of subpar? I agree. I agree with you, but again, you make the bed that you sleep in. And to me, when I look at examples and just going through it, I think that the teams that do the best, the Alabamas, the Clemsons, I think part of that Saban blueprint, and I know this for a fact, actually, the Alabama sports psychologist that Saban uses for the coaches came and spoke to us at South one time, and it was unbelievable, the in-depth, and I'll tell one of those stories here soon, but I think his roster management is about as good as it gets, especially when you factor in how many players have left early from Alabama. And when I look around, and sometimes you do have to replace multiple guys at a position. But when I look at offensive line and you basically lose everybody in one class, that's actually pretty rare. Typically, you have at least two coming back that played significant minutes. And when it comes down to it, I think that J.B. Grimes was a huge liability in recruiting.
The only reason Auburn has a starting offensive lineman returning is because Brahms was inserted into the starting lineup during the season. I mean, Auburn started
Caleb Kim.
Auburn started 5 senior offensive linemen against Oregon in the season opener. And when you do that, you're going to be in the situation you're in now, where you have an offensive line with you have 100%. Nick Brahms, and then the only other guy who has ever made a start as a college football player is the graduate transfer coming in from Akron, Brandon Council, and who has played at every position and could provide depth or break into the starting lineup. We'll see. On the drive we've been talking when we talk about the offensive line battle, it really is like it's a battle royale where it is. I mean, you have
it's everywhere.
Players
it's everywhere
that could fit 4 spots. I mean, and nobody, because there's no spring. It's really tough to have any idea, who's leading going into whenever the team gets back together. And I mean, and I don't know how. I think Jack McNell's got his he's got his work cut out for him getting an offensive line together. He's got a lot of different possible combinations. We'll see, who catches his eye when the team gets back together. But it is, I mean. I don't know if these offensive linemen will ever have an opportunity like this again, because you have 4 different positions open. You have so many different players who could fill any one of those spots. And there's no telling what the Auburn offensive line could look like on opening day. Brodarius Ham is the guy. I know you're a big Brodarius Ham fan. He's probably the guy that you would feel most confident about being a starter when you get beyond
Yeah, if I was doing the odds in Vegas, he would be the only, probably him and Brahms
Ham
would be the only
guy beyond Nick Brahms that you could. I mean, I would most likely starter. After that, I mean, there really is no telling. I mean, because there's health concerns with some of them. There are,
Yep, you sign a JUCO kid as good as he is, the Killian Zarrere kid, who's got an injury, and from coaching junior college, from coaching at places that recruit junior college, you sign junior college kids to play. You sign Killian Zarrere to play. You sign Brendan Coffey to play. You get grad transfers to play. My problem is this, Dan. My problem is this. When I think about Auburn, I really think about three things: defensive linemen, offensive linemen, and running backs. Auburn recruits the running back position pretty well and have in the past. They recruit the defensive line position. A lot has to do with Rodney Garner, better than any position, I think, on the team. My question is, if you're Gus Malzahn and all you've said your whole career is that we're a run-first, play-action team, we're going to be able to run the ball, then how in the hell do you struggle so much signing offensive linemen? Because if you look at the amount of offensive linemen that have gone to Alabama and Georgia, and I mean, even Florida is a great example, that have gotten drafted.
And
I think Alabama's had 15 offensive linemen drafted since 2010. Auburn's had 6 or 7.
You know what I mean? I know that's not really a consolation here, but I mean that exactly.
I mean, yeah,
exactly.
I tried. Like I said, I tried to date
choosing
10s,
somebody
but
else,
it never
right?
works out.
It's what happens. I mean, exactly.
Exactly.
I mean,
somebody that can offer them what Alabama and Georgia can.
I understand that that criticism of the last few years of Auburn football is that you look, and there have been times where maybe there's been a talent gap on the offensive line between some of Auburn's opponents and Auburn. And that can be, that can, when you don't have a stellar win-loss record against your rivals, that's something that's going to be pointed out. I want to wait and see with this offensive line, because first of all, there are real recruits on this line. There are guys there are SEC. There's not.
There are, but there's not that guy.
I
you know
want
what
to
I'm
see
saying?
what Killian Zier is the top junior college player, the top junior college offensive lineman.
He is, but I mean, he's you sign him with an injury.
That.
To me,
I think
you're taking
we'll
a big
see.
risk.
It's a big risk. The pressure is on, because I think if the offensive line struggles, especially early, it could sort of torpedo the whole thing. And so the pressure is on to find 4 guys who can play alongside Nick Brahms that you feel good about. I mean, you have a lot of options. You have a lot of different combinations you can experiment with. And I wouldn't be surprised at all, especially if the season goes off as scheduled. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see several different combinations in the Alcorn State game, because I think that's sort of a dress rehearsal before you play North Carolina and Atlanta. And you need to have the offensive line figured out. North Carolina's pretty good. Like you need to have they're good enough. They're good enough that if you're not if you're not sure who your offensive line is, you might be in real trouble against them. So that's maybe the most important issue facing the team right now. I know people like to talk about the Chad Morris, Gus Malzahn dynamic. Exactly, and
none of that matters if the offensive line is good, because
sort of defining characteristic of Gus Malzahn's best offenses is the play up front. I mean, the quarterbacks have been Jarrett Stidham, Nick Marshall, and Cam Newton are wildly different quarterbacks, and the offenses in those 3 years, they had some similarities, but they were not. It's not the same. What was the same was that the offensive line was able to open up big holes, and the run game was able to have huge success. Yes, and if
it makes
in 2020, I would look at it as I would look at it as another opportunity to have real success. What do you make of the running back room? Because you said it looks like they've done pretty well recruiting that. You lose Whitlow from last year, and you have you have a group of inexperienced, talented guys. I mean, I wonder if Tank Bigsby's going to come and just take the job.
I think it's a great question, and number one, what I look at is I thought Boobie Whitlow was a good running
he played
back.
great at times.
Did not think
right?
he was great. He wasn't really a home run threat. He did, but just his lack of ball security at times almost cost Auburn in some games.
He was
Auburn
also
very lucky. He wasn't a guy that was going to run
more than the fumbling, because he wasn't. I understand that, but I thought there were times when he was a complete non-factor. There were games where it's like, oh, well, he's just going to run for. He's going to go too.
Yeah,
in this game or something like that. Now there were other times. I mean, the Iron Bowl in 2019 was one of the best games he ever played, and there were times when he was the offense. But
he did.
But
And
it's
I just
too
look at
bad. I don't know what's going on there with him leaving. Because he left like the week after the deadline to declare he was draft eligible, decided not to do it. I don't. I hope he plays more college football because I don't think he's going to get to the NFL if he doesn't. I hope things work out for him. It's too bad he's not back. But beyond him, you got Bigsby, you got Williams. What do you like Shivers?
I like Dan. I like Bigsby. I think here's my assessment. And I did a whole breakdown, actually, a positional breakdown on I believe it was the Friday Musings. The way I look at it is this: number one, DJ Williams is a good back. He's not elite. I think he'd be a great 2. I think he'd be a great 2 in the SEC. Obviously, he'll get better. I just don't see the natural things that you have to do, the explosion, the being able to finish runs for touchdowns. I think about him taking a horrible angle and getting pushed out of the 2 on what should have been a touchdown run against LSU that would have changed the game. Auburn ends up not scoring. It's little things like that make a great back. But when I look at Sean Shivers, he can't pass protect, and that's not his fault. I always say he runs a 4.3, but he's also 4.3, and you knew that when you signed him. And he's going to be a gadget play guy. He'll be a jet sweep guy. He'll be great on kickoff return. I feel he'll be able to do a few more things, especially when you get close to the goal line. He's not going to be able to be a consistent guy back there.
They did. Yeah.
There is, and they did against Alabama. They gave him the jet sweep. That's how you have to do it, Dan, because if he's in the game, it's not like Auburn is the only team that knows he can't pass protect. The defense is going to know that, hey, man, it's probably a pass if he lines up at running back. But when I look at Tank Bigsby, I see a lot of Dalvin Cook. Just his acceleration, his build, his ability to be able to run high but not be weak. I know that sounds and I think that's really kind of the way his body is. And then I look at a guy like Harold Joyner, Dan, who I know is probably going to play the flex and they can do more things. But God almighty, Dan, I watch him catch that wheel. I forgot who was against. And I watch him run, and he looks like a Clydesdale running down the field. And I just wonder if it's a mental thing with him, if it's a ball security thing with him. Because he looks like Darren McFadden. He's not as fast, but he's built like Darren McFadden.
You could take 3 or 4 different football coaches and ask him what Harold Joyner is, and they would all have different ideas about how to use him. He's a Swiss Army knife, which is great if you can. I mean, if you're Percy Harvin, you can line up anywhere and make it work. But I think a lot of guys benefit from just focusing on mastering one skill set. See, I don't
understand why they just don't line him up in the backfield and run the Powell.
I think he's 6'4". I think it's
really?
I think it's just really. I don't know if he's on. I think he lacks the build to be like a guy that you feel field with. I think he's more of I imagine him as a pass catcher, maybe as sort of a hybrid slot receiver tight end sort of thing. I think he's a little. I think he's probably not strong enough to be like a run blocking H-back in this offense. Like, yeah, I think he's somebody you're going to be throwing the ball to.
I don't think he has the mentality.
Find ways,
for that
maybe
either.
he's going to get. We've heard this before in Gus's offense. I think he's a guy you give to on the sweep, and he's a guy you throw it to, and that's not how they've used him so far. But I think he's sort of ill-suited for tailback, and there's a lot of other options on the depth chart to where you run the risk of is the best use of Harold Joyner as your number 5 running back, like.
I think, Dan, if he's at Bama going into this year, they move him to Will. I think he's playing linebacker right now. They put 30 pounds on him.
Yeah, he's a guy I'd be throwing the ball to. Like that's when I look at Harold Joyner, I think that's what I see. Especially
I can see that.
Especially because
I expect
once you get
to
past
come in and push for
Seth
carries.
Williams and Anthony Schwartz and Eli Stove, it is unknown what else you've got at receiver, and for the most part, tight end. Yes, you bring back Schenker, but I mean you brought in Tyler Fromm and Luke Deal, who didn't play very much last year, and then you're bringing in 2 other tight ends that Chad Morris seems to really like, and then you've got a bunch of receivers that haven't I mean, they have potential. Some of them have played, mop up duty. In like the graduate transfer Zach Farrar, but a lot of these guys redshirted last year or are coming in as true freshmen. Like it is wide open, and that's a position where I think that's something else you're gonna wait and see on early in the season is, are they only gonna throw the ball to Seth, Anthony, and Eli? And if not,
yeah, well, Seth's about to get doubled. Eli
school.
Stove is
Nice
going to have to be a guy that
that's right.
It's got to be every game.
That's right. Don't worry about it.
Yep. That's right. That's right.
I think you're right. I think Eli and Anthony Schwartz are going to be under pressure to produce because Seth Williams is going to command so much attention. I mean, I think any reasonable person game planning for the Auburn offense right now would be putting outsized attention on stopping Seth Williams. And I mean, it's make Auburn beat you with other things. Make them prove they can run the ball with whoever's playing running back. Make Bo Nix throw the ball to other receivers, and find a way because too often Seth Williams is the reason Auburn beats you. And so the Oregon game, I mean, you got to find a way to
look at the Bama game,
Texas A&M in 2018.
Oh my goodness! And he and Auburn, honestly. And Dan, Auburn's lucky to have Seth Williams. There wasn't a ton of pub about Seth Williams because he was a little under. I believe he was like 180 pounds coming out of high school. But again, that was a steal. When I look back at it, I think that was a steal. And speaking of recruiting, Dan, and you guys actually asked me this on the drive, and Auburn right now, talking about football, of course, stands with 4 commitments, and I don't think there should be panic mode. I actually think it's a different thing, and I want to get into that with you. I think Gus may be finally starting to play a game of chess in recruiting rather than checkers. And what I mean by that is I feel like Auburn in the past, and when a kid says, hey, I want to commit, Bama and Georgia, if it's not an elite level guy early, sometimes they'll hold that kid off, really, and more times than not. Well, Auburn in the past has been more willing to accept that early commitment. And I think they're either taking silent commits right now because they want to have some week like Tennessee had closer to signing day where there's a lot of big momentum. But I think Gus is trying, and I may be giving him too much credit, Dan. I may be giving him too much credit. But since it looks like a different approach, do you think Gus is actually trying to put plants like a Lee Hunter to actually have somebody on a Georgia visit that is really working for Auburn? Because Auburn has gotten that done to them, whether it be Reuben Foster, multiple occasions, and they haven't really combated that. They were kind of like the nice guys in recruiting. Has Gus finally, now that maybe the seat is this hot, changed course a little bit and tried to change the narrative?
I mean, that's a very interesting sort of tinfoil hat
recruiting
theory about what Gus Malzahn is doing, and I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, I would want more evidence before I'm thinking that Gus is, the recruiting spies and sending them on missions to corrupt. I know. I'm not doubting. I'm not doubting it for sure.
It's a real thing, Dan. We did it in Detroit twice.
But it's
we did it in Detroit twice.
Yeah, I think recruiting is really hard to evaluate right now because of the way that everything has been disrupted. I think that it's.
I agree.
This is usually a big month for Auburn recruiting with Big Cat weekends usually towards the tail end of the month, and this is when Auburn really starts to key in on the big targets of the class of 2021. This is when they would normally be doing that, and it's harder right now. And I wonder if guys are going to be. I wonder if recruits in general are going to be more patient about committing, and they're going to wait longer than they might because. They're going to wait longer than they might normally wait because they want to see what happens with the college football season in 2020 and whether or not they're able to take visits and whether or not they're able to travel to games and things like that. So yeah, I think I wouldn't worry too much. And with Auburn, I think a lot of it's going to depend on what happens in 2020 and how do you do, because Malzahn's probably not in the same position as Nick Saban or Kirby or Ed Orgeron, where you can survive a tumultuous year. I think Nick's, he's under unique pressure to. I say unique pressure to win, like he's not always under this pressure to win. Feels like we're going into another. This is the 4th season in a row of Gus Malzahn hot seat talk. You know what? Fifth, because he was in trouble going into 16, right?
Yeah.
And you got the LSU game that year where if he doesn't beat Les Miles, it was like a loser leaves town football game against Les Miles, and then in 17.
Yes, I remember
he
that.
needed to win, or the Jarrett Stidham thing. If that had blown up, then I think there would have been pressure. And he gets the contract extension after that year. 18 people are pretty unhappy after the season's over, and not enough to get him fired, but enough to get him back on the hot seat. Last year, he goes 9-3, beats Bama, turns down the Arkansas job, and now here we are. I mean, it really is every year. I hope that he could. I like to believe that like an 11-1 type season would quiet it down, but it would only quiet it down until you lose a game in 2021, and then
it is, and that's the nature.
I think he's under
because again he's getting paid a lot of money. It's
pressure.
And
where
I think sometimes people give
Kirby Smart. I don't think feels that kind of heat after a loss. And even I know Nick Saban and Ed Orgeron don't lose all that often, but when they lose games, it's not. Is the wrong guy at the helm right now, and it feels like that's where. Whatever, even if you think Gus Malzahn has job security right now, go and lose the UNC game and listen to the radio afterward.
Dan, I think he had to beat Bama last year after losing to Georgia at home. I think, and I heard from a few people that I know are pretty connected, that if Auburn would have lost to Bama or would have lost to Bama bad, and the offense would have played horrible,
I could have seen. I'll tell you what. I could have seen a situation last year
maybe making a move
where
but he won the game.
If Auburn loses to Alabama and finishes 8-4, I could have seen a scenario where Auburn gets with Gus. They both agree it's not working, and Gus has a good offer from Arkansas. Like I think that could now. Maybe I'm wearing the tinfoil hat now. Maybe I'm the one. I think that could have happened. I think that could have happened.
No, Dan,
I
think there's more people that think that than don't.
Would voluntarily leave a situation where he's wanted at Auburn to go coach at Arkansas, because it's much harder to get to the SEC championship game. It's much harder to win the SEC. It's much harder to get to the playoff, etc. at Arkansas than it is at Auburn. I don't, and I think Gus is a really competitive guy who doesn't want to willingly downgrade the situation he's in. If he's not wanted at Auburn, and if Arkansas would view him as a conquering hero, I could see a scenario where that appeals to Gus Malzahn. But he beat Alabama, and so it doesn't. That's everything's fine until next.
Everything's fine. You beat
lose.
Bama, everything's fine. Yep. There you go. You bought yourself a little time, but and again, I think that's a great answer, Dan. I think you're right on there. My next question, and this has been said by Malzahn himself.
Will
Bo Nix win a
the
championship
guys?
at
I
Auburn?
saw a study about this where most of the guys who start as true freshmen in the season opener at quarterback end up either winning a conference championship or going in the first round of the NFL draft before in their college careers. And I feel like if Bo Nix can accomplish either of those things, it's an indication that he had a very successful Auburn career. I would not, if I had to, do I think Bo Nix will win the SEC championship before the end of his Auburn career? Yeah, I'll go with yes too. I think
say
so.
yes.
I mean,
Dan.
I could see a situation. I mean, the one caveat of that is that's hard, man. It's really hard to win.
It's tough. I think it's not next year, but the year after. I think his junior year with that
and the home
line coming
schedule
back
in 2021 as well. You have Georgia and Bama both in Auburn. Yeah,
that's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I could see 2020
and the home schedule. That's going to be the shot.
Unless things completely go sideways this year, I could see a scenario where Auburn is among the national preseason favorites in 2021. Because now that if you're 5-7 or 6-6 this year, maybe not. But you look to bring back a lot of key pieces from this team in 2021, and you have the favorable schedule. I think if you're 8-4, 9-3 or better this year, you go into 2021 as a very trendy team. Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, probably top 5 preseason, I would think. You'd have a chance. But and people, again, there's a lot of knocks against Bo Nix. Number one, I really don't think people understand how hard it is to play the quarterback position as a true freshman.
Can I ask
your
you,
first
Jake?
game's against Oregon.
So one of the
and
things
even
about
really
the
throughout the
legend of Bo
season,
Nix, right,
because it's your first time seeing it.
He was playing in the playoffs as an 8th grader, right? He was in the high school playoffs as an 8th grader. What do you think is harder to do? Play a high school playoff game at quarterback as an 8th grader, or play a college football game as a true freshman?
I would say, well, I would have to say like this: at Bo Nix's level, at that level where Bo Nix is, where you're at the top level of the top, I think it's harder your freshman year of college.
Because I would argue the physical,
and it's not really even an experience.
Is it the physical maturity?
I just think you have your body's more your body has to be in such a different place to be able to make it through a game against an Oregon or an LSU. In 8th grade in high school, sometimes kids may be bigger. You know what I'm saying? There's that big 8th grader that the only one in the class that's playing because he's bigger.
I just think he was uniquely qualified really to start as a college football player because he'd been in a situation where he was with guys who were far advanced in physical maturity before. Like he's like that's not a new that's not a sort of an unknown to him. He's done that before, and so I think it was actually pretty impressive what he was able to do as a true freshman last year. Even yes, there were struggles, and there were, and it wasn't just on his shoulders either. I mean, there were struggles all over the field on offense at times last year, but. I mean, some of the throws he was making were, those were pinpoint, perfect timing, like
unreal.
The kind of throws that you don't expect a true freshman to make.
Exactly. Well, Dan, let me ask you this. I think this is the best way to ask it, because we know Auburn's offensive line struggles last year. If you put Bo Nix behind Alabama's offensive line,
I don't think they're any worse. Last year? I don't think they take it down. I don't think they take a step back. I think that, and by the way, you're not just giving him offensive. Are you giving him Alabama's receivers?
No.
Are you giving him the 4 first-round picks?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. You put Bo Nix, or let's say, you know what? That's a tough one. Alabama does have elite talent everywhere, and it's not. I'm a firm believer of if a loaf of bread could turn around and hand the ball off, it could start at Alabama for 4 years at quarterback. But what I think is that if Bo Nix has the ability around him and the ability up front, because to me the kid is a natural born. He was born to play quarterback. You can see it, and I watch him during the game. It's almost like he's having to handle Gus more than Gus is having to handle him. And there was another guy that did that, Dan, and nobody thinks about. And the demeanor between Bo Nix and Nick Marshall is very similar.
Quarterback to be a calming influence for the most part, right? Yes, there are times when he needs to get fired up, but you don't want a quarterback who gets too high, because that quarterback's also maybe prone to get too low. Right? You don't want it to be too emotional, and I think that the emotional
it's a roller coaster. It's an emotional roller coaster.
Displayed as a. Look, forget about the wins. Think about how close Auburn got to making the comeback against Georgia in Jordan-Hare from a situation where LSU as well, but against Georgia you're down 21, and instead of packing it in and feeling sorry for yourself, Auburn rallies, and against a defense that was maybe at that point the best one in the country. Auburn rallies and nearly ties the game there at the end, and they do a lot of that.
You could make an argument for that.
With Bo Nix making throws. So I think there's there are question marks about the 2020 team, but a lot of the things that are known are things that you have to really like, because they've shown. I mean, some of these skill position players have shown, just not just incredible ability, but also a mental toughness and in there in tough situations and persevere and come out ahead on the other side.
Yeah. That's a great point. That's a great point. And really kind of sticking in football and in the SEC. Give me, Dan, and you already know mine. I've talked about South Carolina on the podcast, and all my listeners kind of understand where I'm at on that. Give me your surprise team in the SEC, good and bad. I want a bad one too, Dan. I told you I was going to put you on the spot. Give me your SEC surprise in a good way in 2020.
That's really
SEC
interesting
surprise
because
in a bad way in 2020.
I think I don't want to
and
pick,
you will be judged.
I don't want to pick South Carolina for either of them, because you've got South Carolina, and I'm okay with that. I know, but they're maybe not my choice anyway. I'll tell you who I think could be.
You can, Dan.
A
Listen,
team that
I know
think
you're
could
a
be
man
better
of your own thoughts.
than they were last
You're a man
year.
of your own thoughts.
Is, I mean, I do like the Mike Leach signing. I didn't understand bringing in Joe Moorhead at all. I was confused. I was confused from the moment they hired him. We had Tuberville on the drive, and Tuberville said that he'd never heard of Joe Moorhead when he got the, like. I mean, it was a very strange.
It was a weird
connection.
Move it was a weird connection.
I'm not ruling out the possibility that someone can come to the SEC without any experience in the region and succeed. Urban Meyer did it. I mean, it can happen, but it's. And I think Mike Leach was
well. So
Texas
you think
for
Mike
a long
Leach
time,
is going to do it?
And I mean, I don't think it's the same thing as coming from New York and Pennsylvania.
Okay, yeah,
exclusively. I think Mike Leach understands. He understands the Southeast enough. He's been around, and he also, I don't know much about it, but there's a coaching academy in Mobile, right? That Mike Leach went to. He used to live in Mobile, so I mean, the guy knows the Southeast, and Joe, if a lot of what was wrong with the Joe Moorhead offense was the quarterback position. And I mean, Mississippi State these last 2 years, I mean, Fitzgerald at times was excellent in 2018, but when you asked him to throw the ball a lot, it was a mistake. And last year they couldn't throw the ball at all. And I think that if you can bring in,
couldn't do it.
If the quarterback acquisition works out, I think Mississippi State can be sort of a plucky, sort of dangerous team in 2020. That's one to me where, I mean, I'm curious to see how that works out. I think he's got a chance to succeed immediately in a way that Lane Kiffin probably doesn't, because there's a talent problem there, and it's going to take a year or two.
Yeah.
I think Lane Kiffin could work eventually as well. I think Leach has a better shot at immediate success. As a disappointment, I don't think LSU and Florida will both be really good. I think one of those two teams could maybe lose a game or two. And Florida's probably been living more dangerously as far as playing a lot of close games and getting out on the other side and maybe winning games where you felt they were outplayed or could have been or could have very easily lost. And when you do that, it's like it's like rolling dice, right? Like you're not always going to be able to come out on top. Eventually, the odds are going to catch up to you, and maybe that could happen with Florida. Now they bring back a quarterback as well. They bring back a lot of pieces they seem to really like, but I could see Florida's luck running out a little bit in 2020. And with LSU, it's just
I do. That was actually my pick, Dan. Me and you are 100% on the same page.
And among other people, Florida. Obviously, Joe Brady's gone.
It is, yeah. I mean,
yeah, you bring back Chase, though. I mean, you probably bring back.
Yeah, you lose some receivers, obviously Justin Jefferson,
and players I've heard of who didn't.
They have guys getting drafted. Dan, I've never heard of
Jr.
Before.
I mean, there are players who, during the season looked like they belonged to the NFL who were not among the 24 or so LSU players that went in this year's NFL draft.
Yeah, it was insane. That was insane. But yeah, man, that's and really from a football standpoint, where we're at, I mean, that's really all there is to talk about. And
yeah, what do you got?
I kind of want to end in this session, Dan, with getting off sports for a second, because I know you're well versed. All right. My first
do I
kind of
believe in
out there
aliens?
question
I
is, do you believe in aliens, Dan Peck?
I would say I think
Yeah.
it is possible, if not probable, that life exists in the universe outside of our planet. I don't believe they've ever come here and made contact with us, but I do believe that it just seems like it just seems like
Okay.
there's too much space out there for us to be the only living things to be here. Like that. Yeah, for sure. Now I don't know if I don't know if
That's
anyone has
always, I
ever
just
seen
think
one.
it's
I
always an
don't know if
interesting
anyone,
question, because so many people have so
I
many
don't know
different
if they've
perspectives.
ever reached out to us or anything like that. But I do think that it's possible that out there somewhere something else is alive. Sure.
I'm with you, dog. And last question, and we'll wrap it up after this.
It's interesting.
What
Okay,
made
so
you want to do what you
assume
do?
that what I
And
do
what's
for the
the
answer to
best
this
part
question is
about what you
co-hosting
do?
the drive, because that's that's my highest profile type of employment.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, that the IRS
Yeah.
knows about. So
that we know of,
I
that you've released.
my mom worked in radio when I was a kid, and I was always around radio stations in the Florida, on the Florida Panhandle, Northwest Florida, and stuff. And when I was in high school, I started working part time at one, and gradually just sort of went on the air doing music stuff. It was a top 40 station, Mix 103 in Destin, Florida, which might still be there.
Mm-hmm.
It's the
okay.
It's over by the Pepitos on Highway 98 with the Destin Cinema out front. You know what? I was Dan Peck.
Okay.
Like,
Did you have a nickname? Was it like
it was
DJ
given
Danny
name.
P or
I was
something?
Dan Peck. I wasn't gonna say. I mean, this
There
was like
you go. You would be Dan
we
Peck.
were like introduced
You
to
would
like
be
Matchbox
Dan Peck.
20 and Britney Spears songs, and like I wasn't gonna say anything. Like this was the radio station, like music for everybody at work. You know what I mean? Like this, I'm not going to say anything offensive or anything like that. Like I'll I'll come in with the weather or like what celebrity birthdays there are, things like that. And I was just doing that part time as like a way to. I mean, it was fun, and it was also like it was the money was nice, so it was it worked out for me. And then when I came up to Auburn, I came here to do now. I was always a big sports fan too. And I'd listen to, I was listening to like Tony Kornheiser and Dan Patrick and guys like that back then. I was a big Tony Kornheiser fan. I loved PTI when it first started. That show sort of blew my mind. And when I came up to Auburn, I started working at a local group of radio stations, mostly doing the same thing, where I was occasionally on the air for music. Mostly I was running the board when the live jocks would call in, because they were doing remotes and things, when people would be if guys broadcasting live from a car dealership or a restaurant opening or something like that, I would be the guy in the studio, patching his call through, putting him on the air. And we had sports at that radio station, which was new to me, because you don't really have sports talk radio we didn't have local sports talk radio on the Florida Panhandle when I was growing up. All my experiences were with national people, and when I moved to Auburn, suddenly there's local folks, and one of them's Bill Cameron, and I started being behind the scenes for that show, and I guess I earned Bill's trust enough to start being on the air, and then that turned into, suddenly I was Bill's co-host, and I did that until I graduated from college, and went and moved on, and thought about what I was doing, and decided wouldn't mind moving back and trying some other things, and now I'm doing it again with him, and it's fun. I mean, Bill's an easy guy to talk to. He's super knowledgeable about practically everything in the world of Auburn sports, and a whole lot of other stuff too. But it's it's back when there were sports, it was the easiest part of my day, was the 2 hours I spent on the show with Bill, because it was just it was not only fun to be able to get be able to throw the phones open and talk, and it's still a lot of fun. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still great, but I guess the last 7 or 8 weeks like I didn't realize how difficult the job can be. But I mean, it's tougher to figure out, sports to talk about when there are no sports. But we're still out there. We're doing our best, and I like to think we're still producing entertaining shows, and there's still enough to talk about. But yeah, the best part of my job is like the Monday shows after football games. Like the Monday, like the ones where you just throw the phones open and we let people, chime in about, what did they think of the game on Saturday, and what direction the program's going and stuff like that. We'll have opinions too. I mean, it's impossible for Bill and I to watch a football game and not come away with like a ton of opinions of our own. It is, yeah. No, and I like to think we're pretty good at it, but it's like,
and it's your job,
but
you do a good job of it.
I think those shows
y'all are
that are like right around the fever pitch, like the Friday show before a game, the Monday show after a game, like those are so much fun.
Yeah.
Like even, the show's fun every day, but those shows, sandwiched around a football game are, those are the best. Oh, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you. I hope I didn't.
Well,
I hope I didn't
Dan
go too
Peck,
long.
thanks so much for joining us.
I hope people enjoy this.
It couldn't have gone
I'm on
better.
Twitter.
No.
At Daniel Allen Peck, or if you can Google me, Dan Peck Twitter.
Yep.
I think I'm the first one that comes up if you Google Dan Peck Twitter. So if not, I want to be. So please do that so I can get the SEO. So I can. There's a writer for Family Guy named Dan Peck, so I'm in trouble. Like there's a writer for Family Dan Peck, and there's a weatherman
not you?
somewhere named Dan Peck, and those guys are always big on social media because I know we gotta settle this. We gotta figure out.
Well, y'all should meet up and hang out.
It's gonna be the last one. That's right. Yeah, it's gonna be Kumite. No, but yeah, I'm Dan Peck on Twitter. I don't talk. I don't talk exclusively about sports, but occasionally I'll chime in, my opinion about a story or two. And during football season, I'm a little more active with the Auburn stuff. But yeah, you can catch the drive on ESPN 106.7, 4 to 6 Monday through Friday. And if you're not in the Auburn local area, you can listen to it on the internet, espnau.com, listen live, or download the ESPN 106.7 app for your mobile device. And and during basketball season, I'm the voice of the women's basketball team for the Troy Trojans. We won the Sun Belt this past year, 25-4. We were going into the Sun Belt Cup. We were actually about to get on the bus when they canceled the conference tournament, which was sort of a bummer. But they did win the regular season for the first time in program history. They won the Sun Belt regular season title, so it was a big year for like Auburn, the best senior class that the program's ever had graduated this year. So congratulations to them, and yeah, great. If you during basketball season, if you want to hear me, you can check that out at TroyTrojans.com.
Yep, and everybody should go check that out. Download that app. Again, like I said, Dan, thanks so
much.
Hey,
don't go easy. Awesome don't go easy on Blackerby. Okay. Really, rake that guy over the coals.
Again, hey, I'm not good. No. We're getting after it. Hey, we're gonna get after it, man. But again, thank you. And to any listeners out there, obviously you can go to Twitter at the J Boy Show. Make sure to donate at the top. We're gonna be doing these interview style episodes very often, probably more than not. And again, like I said, Dan, thank you.